test. Hey, what's going on, everyone? This is Jeff D from Downfield Read. Thanks for tuning in to a show tonight. Tonight, we're not going to be going over each game by game, and giving you the predicted winners. Nick from Relatively Uncharted and myself are usually pairing up to do that kind of thing. Instead of doing that tonight, I figured since we are getting into week 10 of the NFL, we're down 9 weeks. We've got 9 more to go. We are at halftime, really, in the NFL. So I thought, what better chance or what better time would there be than right now to kind of go through those beginning of regular season predictions of the power rankings, the Downfield Read power rankings, and kind of compare where we're at right now, how the season is going for some of these teams, talk about some disappointments and all that fun stuff. So we have a game tonight. It's going to be a really good game. So I wanted to get this out right now. We got game time in about an hour and 15 minutes. With the Baltimore Ravens and the Cincinnati Bengals. Should be a very good game. 2 very good quarterbacks, a lot of offensive firepower. Over under tonight's 52. So if you've got some guys in that game in your fantasy football leagues, you might want to plug them in ASAP before that game gets started. Except if you've got Cincinnati's defense or Baltimore's defense, you probably want to leave those 2 on your bench, and hopefully you picked somebody else up to play those individuals. Otherwise, this is kind of your warning to get those guys in, check your lineups, all that fun stuff. So we've had a fun week so far this week. Let's get into the second show of the week. And then tomorrow we're still going to do our fantasy football show. Regardless of that, if you've got questions, just go ahead. Hit me up. Mostly on X is where I'm going to answer most of those questions for you when it comes to fantasy football questions. Otherwise, if you log on, if you are following me here tonight, if you're going to ask or follow along, if you've got some questions about fantasy football, don't be afraid to ask those. This isn't really what the show is about, but if I can kill 2 birds with 1 stone, I've been answering some questions already for this upcoming weekend. But let's get right into it. I'm just going to upload right here is my 2024, says first quarter on there, but this is actually the halftime show. Boom, boom. There it says halftime right there. Downfield Read power rankings, and we are going to kick it off at number 32. If you've seen this before, this is the 3rd one that we've done. We did a regular season or a pre-regular season show where we predicted where everybody was going to go record by record. Nick and I, we came out probably about 4 weeks ago, maybe, did a first quarter power rankings. And now we've got, like I mentioned before, the halftime power rankings. So let's just dive right into it. And it's, sad. There's no change here at number 32. Predicted in the beginning of the year that the New England Patriots were going to be the worst team in the NFL, and sadly, they still are. They've got one of the worst records. Yes, they did have a win last week. They are at 2-7. Had really a 7-game losing streak going for a while. They won their first game of the year, if everybody remembers that, against Cincinnati, and then all of a sudden they came out and they started to lose 6-7 times in a row. And now they are 2-7. They've had not a real big or not a real heavy schedule, I should say. They've had a pretty mediocre one so far year to date by the teams that they've played and their records as well. They're really tied for 15th for the toughest schedule this year. So doesn't really matter if they had a hard schedule, easy schedule. Didn't really predict them to do much. Started off the year at number 32. And they are at halftime still, in my opinion, still the worst NFL team out there to date. At number 31, and this is a big surprise to me, you can kind of see in there as well, I've got the Cleveland Browns, and I didn't have Cleveland this low before. Cleveland really kind of surprised me as how bad that they were going to play this year. It seems like they had a couple of things that were in their favor. At what point in time were they going to get Nick Chubb back? And he's back right now. Didn't think that they were going to be trading Amari Cooper. Didn't think that Deshaun Watson, even though I didn't really care for him that much, and he's out for the rest of the year now, didn't think that Deshaun Watson was going to play as badly as he has. So if you see there, it's a -13. It basically means that I had them in the beginning of the year. That's not from the first quarter rankings, but it's from the beginning of the year rankings where I had them 13 spots higher than where they're at right now. I don't see them getting out of the basement anytime soon or in that, one of those bottom spots. The Browns as a whole are also 2-7, tied for the worst record in the NFL. and they've had an even easier strength of schedule than the New England Patriots have. Their strength of schedule is 24th overall, so not very strong. You could make an argument that the Cleveland Browns are the worst team in football. I don't think they are yet. I guess we'll have to see a couple more weeks to see where Cleveland finishes out. I actually believe that Jameis Winston gives them a better opportunity to win in their back half of the season. But overall, not a real great team. They've had a relatively easy schedule so far, and it's not going to get much easier as they start to go up against opponents in their own division. So that's where we are at that point in time. All right, sorry about that. Had to pause everyone there for a second. You probably noticed the flickering lights in the background here. Had to have that adjusted for me real quick. All right, let's move on to the next one, right? We've got at number 30, another team that's been very disappointing this year, Jacksonville, the Jaguars. And you can see there a -16 being at number 30. I had them somewhere in the middle of the pack. At this point in time, it does not appear that they are going to even reach the middle of the pack. Very disappointing year last year. I thought that they should have last year gone somewhere in the range of 13-4 with the easy schedule, the easy strength of schedule that they had in 2023. Completely disappointed everybody there. They completely disappoint everybody this year as well. It's only a matter of time before Doug Peterson ends up getting fired in that organization. The Jaguars 2-7 as well, along with the Cleveland Browns and the New England Patriots that are sitting there. And similar situation, they're tied for 22nd for their strength of schedule right now. They've played teams with a winning percentage, or I guess a winning 33, losing 37. So the teams that they've played have a 471 winning percentage, not very high, not even good enough to be in the half. But this is where Jacksonville sits right now. They have shown a few signs of life recently, but I think it's a little bit too little, too late for Jacksonville this year as well. They're probably going to end up sitting somewhere toward the bottom. So very disappointing halftime for Jacksonville as well. I think you can expect some coaching changes coming up shortly, though, for the Jaguars. At number 29, no movement here. I had Carolina, actually, there is movement here because I had Carolina at 31. Little bit of a bump up. Carolina moves up 2 spots from my original thought of where they would be. And you could really argue this point. I could have probably left them at number 31 as well, because I don't foresee them actually winning too many more games. So they're going to probably finish. They're definitely going to finish with a top 5 draft pick going into next year. And I suppose with that same record of 2-7, along with the other individuals that we've talked about so far, the only thing that really helps out the Carolina Panthers, and maybe I gave them a bump up because of this, their schedule is also tied for 15th. So they've had a kind of a middle-of-the-road schedule. Their opponents are 35-35 overall. So they've played teams that are 500. So tied for 15th overall. Still not a very promising team, though. There's some thoughts about what they're going to do with Jonathan Brooks. Where does Chuba Hubbard fit in? I think they just gave him actually a 4-year contract extension earlier today. But they've traded away 2 wide receivers. Deontay Johnson is gone. He went to Baltimore. You got Jonathan Mingo is gone, and he was only like 24 years old. I'm not sure why they were getting rid of him instead of somebody like Adam Thielen, who has been in the IR for about the last month and a half. Could have tried to trade him away, but Adam Thielen is still there. You got Xavier Legette, as far as your wide receiver crew there, but they're going to really have to think about what their quarterback situation is going to look like for 2025. It's not going to be Andy Dalton. Otherwise, he'd still be the starting quarterback there. They're putting Bryce Young in really just to see if he can do anything this year. They'll probably hang on to him or try to trade him for something going into next season if somebody has an even bigger quarterback issue, which I can't really foresee that happening. But the Carolina Panthers at this point in time, still in the basement, still tied for the worst record in the NFL at 2-7. But I don't see them as bad as Jacksonville or Cleveland at this point in time. They've got a little bit more momentum going. Next team that I've got is the Tennessee Titans, and you notice that they've got a +2 bump as well. I started them off at number 30. They haven't been completely terrible, and I don't know if that's because of Will Levis or Mason Rudolph. Mason Rudolph has been playing admirably. We're going to see Will Levis come back again this week. We'll see if he can get the win or not. I'm not very hopeful about that in particular, even though, I've got one of his wide receivers. I've got Calvin Ridley on my fantasy team. I'd love to see him actually become a better passer at this point, but you've got the Titans. They're only bumped up there, really. The other teams that we talked about were 2-7. Titans are 2-6. So the only reason why they've gotten a two spot bump up is because they haven't had the opportunity to lose a 7th game yet and go 2-7. So they're just a fraction different than the other teams, but also they've had a much harder schedule so far this year as well. They've had the 7th toughest strength of schedule so far this year. They have faced opponents that have a combined record of 33-27. That is a .550 winning percentage for those teams. So tougher schedule, 2-6, not quite as bad, I guess, percentage-wise, not as bad as a 2-7 type of team. But that's where they're going to fall into place at number 28. Gave them a little bit of a leeway at there, bumping them up 2 spots. At number 27, a lot of people are thinking that the Raiders are the worst team in football right now. I don't see it. Yeah, they're 2-7, so I didn't quite see them actually even being worse than Tennessee at this point in time. I think they still have something that they can salvage outside of trading away Devontae Adams. They could work with their running backs a little bit better. I'm not a big fan of Antonio Pierce as the head coach. I think that was a mistake. They probably could have went outside. I would have liked to see somebody like Mike Vrabel or something like that come in. Or how would you like to see Bill Belichick wearing black and silver? I think that would have been fun too. But the Raiders, I actually had them higher expectations. I did have them ranked 23rd, which not great. Kind of figured that they were going to be not a great team, but better than where they're at right now. Docked down to number 27 overall. Raiders at 2-7. And again, when I do this, I take a look at the strength of schedule that they've played, right? So they're 2-7, but the opponents that they've faced are 38-30 overall. They've got a .559 winning percentage there. So even a little bit better than the Tennessee Titans. And the Raiders have the 6th most difficult schedule so far this year. So you got to give them a little bit of a break. I mean, you can't really help who teams are playing. I get it. And we'll get into that probably a little bit closer when we get to the top 5 or 10, where they've got these easy schedules. The Raiders have had a tough schedule. Now they've got some pieces that are in question. Who's going to be your starting quarterback? Gardner Minshew doesn't look like he's going to be it. They got Ritter in there now. Who the hell knows what's going on? Raiders look like a dysfunctional bunch, but at this point in time, number 27, no need to beat a dead horse. Number 26, we've got the New York Football Giants, who are up 2 spots from number 28 to 26, even though their record is actually the same. It is also at 2-7 at this point in time. The only reason why they're ahead, and you'll start to see a little bit of a trend here, the Giants being 2-7, they've got the 5th toughest strength of schedule so far this year. They've played opponents who have 38 wins, 30 losses for a strength of schedule of .559. So New York Giants get a little bit of a bump there. Malik Neighbors has been hurt for a while. They've got Tyrone Tracy in there now instead of Devin Singletary, so that should definitely help out the offense as well. They're in a tough division, right? I mean, you've got Washington and Philadelphia up at the top, and you've got Dallas, who isn't playing very well, and then you got the Giants. The Giants as a whole are a mess. The offensive line is bad. The defense isn't too bad. They actually haven't given up a whole lot of points this week. I think I've actually got them as one of my sleeper defenses that you could probably go and pick up and start them this week. But 5th toughest schedule overall. Cut them a little bit of slack. I got them 26th. They were at 28. Who knows? Maybe that goes back down within even the next week or so. Getting to the top 25, this is another disappointing team. We've got the New Orleans Saints, and I had high hopes for the Saints. I was one of those guys after the first 2 weeks where they were putting up 40-plus points. I was like, I told you, the Saints are going to win the division. They've got this kind of a team. They looked really great right out of the gates. Kamara looks great, and Olave looks great, and Shaheed and Carr. I mean, the whole thing just looked fantastic. And then all of a sudden, the wheels came off. Literally, they just stopped performing. And now they've got some injuries in there. A lot of injuries in there, and they don't look like they're going to be anybody even close in that really weak division with the Carolina Panthers. The Atlanta Falcons look like they're running away with it, and with all of the injuries that the Tampa Bay Buccaneers have, it's amazing that they are actually still considered anywhere toward the top of that division as well. I did not have very high hopes for that team. But again, we're talking about a lot of 2-win teams. The Saints are no different. They are also 2-7. They have faced opponents that have 39 wins, 29 losses. And by far, that's the best strength of schedule that we've talked about so far in this podcast here. It is a .574 strength of schedule. So very difficult schedule right out the gates. That's why they're a little bit higher when it comes to all of these 2-7, 2-6 teams. They've had the fourth most difficult schedule so far in the first half of this season. When we look at the second half of the season for the Saints, it would appear that it is going to be a little bit easier for them. But the way that they're playing right now, the injuries that they have, I would not be surprised if they hung around this number 25 type of area when we get into the fourth quarter of the season. Going to number 24, this is another big disappointment team, not quite the biggest one out there because we've had Jacksonville that dropped 16 spots, but this is not much better. We've got the Miami Dolphins, who everybody thought was going to be a contender for the AFC East. They dropped 15 spots. That's a big one. Usually I had them at number 9 to begin the season. So they were the first top 10 teams. Now they're a bottom 10 team. Injuries have said it all. Injuries with Tua. As soon as he left, as soon as he was out of the game, that whole offense just really shut down. So the Dolphins overall are 2-6, another 2-win team, only 6 losses. I think they're better than that. I think that they'll end up being better than that, although they have had a very weak schedule to this point in time. They've faced opponents who only have 26 wins, 36 losses, and this is a .419, a winning percentage. So they're not even facing very hard teams. Their strength of schedule is tied for 28th. So they've got top 5 easiest schedule so far to talk about. And they really have not produced anything. I'm actually kind of surprised that Mike McDaniels is still the coach there. They've got a lot of issues. It doesn't seem like they're taking anything seriously in that entire division or with any other games. So the Miami Dolphins have fallen off. And it's almost like one of these kids where, you know what, I'm not playing very well. I'm taking my ball and I'm going home and I don't even care. I'm just going to pout. Time to get a new culture within that organization, I think, because it just does not look good from the top to the bottom. Coming in at number 23, you've got another team that had high aspirations and fell off just as much as the Miami Dolphins. That's a -15 for the New York Jets. I had them at number 8 overall. This has been a roller coaster for the New York Jets. Obviously, they got Devontae Adams in there. They just traded away Mike Williams. So they've had a couple of changes in there, but that's really about it. The biggest fear with the New York Jets, and I took it more experience than it was really age in general, you've got an old quarterback. You've got the oldest offensive line in football back there, but you had some youth with, Garrett Wilson and Breece Hall, Sauce Gardner. You got an offensive player of the year, a defensive player of the year in there. Really should have had better expectations. The Jets are 3-6 overall. So I think that might do it for the two-win teams that we're done talking about them. Now we get on to the kind of the 3-win teams here. The Jets 3-6. They've actually had a more difficult schedule as well, facing opponents that have won 40 games and lost 37. It's a win percentage of .519. That puts them toward the top. It's the 11th hardest strength of schedule so far this year. It's not going to get any easier for them. They do look like they're finally putting some things together here. I think it's a big question mark if they even make the playoffs. At 3-6, it's hard to say that they will, especially in the AFC, which is really potent with a lot of good teams. I mean, right now you probably have close to 3 coming out of the AFC North, and then you get your division winners as well. So got a lot of tough teams coming out of the AFC. The Jets are going to have to struggle, fight, and win a lot in order to make it. But as of right now, 3-6 record for them, and they fall to number 23. At number 22, I was told I was being too harsh on the Chicago Bears in the beginning of the season when I had them at number 25. Oh, they're not that hard. They're not that bad of a team. They're not that bad of a team. Well, I'll give you the respect where it's due here, but you're still in the 20s. So you got the Chicago Bears moving up 3 spots to number 22. For anybody that wants to argue about the Bears at this point in time, I'm looking at it this way. They are 4-4, and they have had one of the easiest schedules in the NFL. Their opponents have 27 wins, 34 losses. Their strength of schedule so far is a .443, which is 25th in the NFL, and their schedule gets a lot harder for this second half of the season. So I did not move them up very far because they are going to stumble and fall They're not playing well right now. They're getting lucky on a few games. The defense, the special teams has helped them out. I think Caleb Williams had maybe 1-2 good games at most. He's not looking like he's going to be this superstar, Jaden Daniels-esque type of quarterback that I think everybody thought he was going to be with the Chicago Bears. If you look at the Washington Commanders record, I think a lot of people in the beginning of the year would have said, well, the Bears are going to be 7-2 at one point. Well, that's what the Commanders are right now. Bears are 4-4. They're a 50-50 club. I think they just fired one of their coaches. Eberflus is on the hot seat. If he was one of the guys that was really pulling for them to keep Caleb Williams and that he could actually develop him into a starting caliber quarterback, he might be gone sooner than you think as well. I think he'll be the patsy in the whole thing. He'll be the fall guy. It's not his fault. But you've got some wide receivers in that group too that aren't very happy with the quarterback play. DJ Moore in particular. I am also not, because DJ Moore is one of my guys as well. I was really hoping that he was going to do something good this year. But that's where the Chicago Bears are right now at number 22. Number 21, we have another fall from grace, and this is the Dallas Cowboys. Everybody said that the Dallas Cowboys were going to be crap this year. I didn't believe them. I said, you know what? The Dallas Cowboys haven't lost that many pieces. They got a lot of flack for not making enough moves in the offseason. Well, when you're one of the best teams in the NFL and you're bringing back the majority of your people, you don't really need to make a lot of moves. Unfortunately for the Dallas Cowboys, it kind of bit them in the butt. Earlier in the season, they lost their top cornerback. All the interceptions that he had, their offensive line has fallen apart. They've been playing this, merry-go-round of running backs that are in there. Ezekiel Elliott, Rico Dowdle. They got Dalvin Cook in there as the number 2 right now. Zeke's not even going with him to games, apparently. Now you've got Dak Prescott is out for who knows what kind of a time period, 4 weeks or so. CeeDee Lamb has been playing out of his mind. He's really the only part of that offense that makes sense at this point in time. Now they're going to be starting Cooper Rush at quarterback, and you can expect them to not play any kind of catch-up, which is really what they needed to do in that division and within the conference. They had to catch up with Philadelphia. They got to catch up with Washington. They've got tougher schedules coming up as well. But the Dallas Cowboys, wow, what a fall from grace. I can honestly say I did not see that coming. Their record being 3-5 at this point in time. They've had kind of a middle-of-the-road type of schedule so far. Their opponents that they've faced, 29 wins, 31 losses. Strength of schedule is a .483 for them, which ties them at 18th overall. Really no excuse for them to be at the record that they're at this point in time, 3-5. I could see maybe 4-4 at the worst, but 3-5 right now, that's going to be tough. Jerry Jones is going to have to make a lot of difficult decisions now, and they didn't make a whole lot outside of what I had mentioned before, getting Jonathan Mingo, a wide receiver, and nothing else at the trade deadline. If they were going to make a push, they could have, but after paying Dak all that money, he's probably feeling it in his bank account as well. So Cowboys, -16. That's harsh. They were a top 5 team to start the season. Not anymore. At number 20, and a lot of people are probably going to say that you got these guys ranked too low. Well, wait until what happens tonight, because I don't think that obviously the Bengals are going to end up winning tonight. They've gone on a nice little stretch here after going 0-4 in the beginning of the season. They've already been beaten by the Ravens once this year. The Bengals at number 20, that is a -14. I gave them their respect in the beginning of the year. I thought they were going to be number 6 team. They really came out really slow. And this is where they're at number 20. Their record is 4-5. They're just under that 500 marker. Their opponents are 500, 35-35, which means that they've got a strength of schedule of 17th overall. So not a real hard schedule. They're winning, they're losing. Their teams that they're playing are good, they're bad. So you've got a 50-50 team here. And the Bengals, too, being in this AFC North, it doesn't matter how bad the Cleveland Browns are. They're probably going to take at least one from you. Doesn't matter how good the Pittsburgh Steelers are. You're going to end up taking one from them, but they're going to take one from you as well. So Bengals, I don't see this as being a high road. I don't think that they're going to make a playoff run here. I think after they lose tonight, knock on wood, at 4-6, it's going to be hard for them to come back and make any kind of a playoff push at that point in time with the remainder of their schedule. So disappointing year for them, being at number 20, -14 spots in the ranking. Here we've got at number 19, we've got the Indianapolis Colts. And the funny thing is, I had them at number 19 to begin the season. They have played up and down. And after watching Anthony Richardson play, I probably would have had them even less than 19 at this point in time. Joe Flacco is a starting quarterback now. Although he did not look impressive last week, he has come out, 2-2 with the Colts so far this year. He's got a great matchup this week. I think that they'll pull out another win. But the Colts right now are 4-5. And I think if the playoffs, I saw something, if the playoffs started this week or after last week, the Colts would have the number 6 or number 7 seed in the playoffs at 4-5. Much like the Bengals here, they'd have a 500 strength of schedule with teams being 34-34. That's tied for 15th overall. So tied for 15th strength of schedule for the Colts. Are they going to make the playoffs? Their division seems to be a little bit easier now with the Houston Texans not playing as well as they should be playing. You still got Jacksonville in there. They're not going to do very much. And the Titans, we already talked about them being 2-6. They're not going to do very much either. So the Colts have a very realistic opportunity to be one of these teams that might finish 9-8 and win their division, or 9-8 and squeak into the playoffs. Who knows what the rest of their year is going to look like. If it's anything like the same for Joe Flacco last year in Cleveland as it is for the Indianapolis Colts, they might actually win that division this year, and that would be a shocker. At number 18, a little bit of a slide down from number 15, Seattle Seahawks with brand new head coach Mike Macdonald there. He's getting some love-hate in Seattle right now for the way that they are playing. He started off really hot with Seattle. Now they're kind of up and down, and they've had chances to win. Feeling bad for him right now. They are also 4-5, and they've had a similar type of strength of schedule where they played opponents that have 35 wins, 34 losses, and it's 14th for a strength of schedule for the Seahawks. They have more of a realistic chance of actually winning that division that they're in than the Indianapolis Colts, because I think everybody is at about 4-5, 5-4, somewhere around that area. Everybody thought that San Fran was going to run away with it. I think actually the Arizona Cardinals might be the top team there at 5-4. The Rams are 4-4. Seahawks 4-5. 49ers 4-4 as well. So they're all right there in that cluster. If McDonald can just get a little bit of momentum, I think that the Seahawks have an opportunity to squeak into the playoffs in the NFC. As of right now, 18th overall puts them kind of just outside there, but I do have hope for them to actually come back up to a number 15, a number 14, maybe even a number 13 later on. But this is halftime, and that's where they're at. We just talked about them. San Fran, fall from grace as well. -16. Being at number 17 right now means that they were ranked number 1 overall on my chart. And I had the same kind of expectations for the San Francisco 49ers as I did with the Dallas Cowboys. They didn't make a whole lot of changes. You're still bringing back Brock Purdy. You got CMC. You got Deebo Samuel. Brandon Ayuk, they got a deal done with. Bringing back George Kittle. They did so well last year. They made it to the Super Bowl. They won the NFC. How could you not have these guys as a favorite again? They didn't lose hardly anything. So, but they just have not played very well at all this year. And I think this is the most astonishing team of all of the fall from grace teams that we've had so far this year. People can look at this and go, I don't know what the problem is here with San Fran. Same coaches, same everything. They're just not, maybe they've gotten figured out. Who knows? But their strength of schedule hasn't been that bad either. They're kind of in that same middle of the park type of schedule. They've got a 5-15 strength of schedule. It puts that at number 13 overall in the NFL. Still no excuse to be 4-4 at this point in time and be thinking, hey man, we're not even winning our division. Still very winnable for every team in that NFC West. We'll see how that shakes out. But for the time being, this is kind of how they're at right now in the middle of the NFL for power ranking. And right above them, somebody else in their division. We kind of talked about the records of each one of these teams and how close they are. It's the LA Rams. I had higher hopes for the LA Rams as well. Had them placed at number 12 overall. Obviously, they've had some issues with injuries as well in the beginning of the year. I think that they are going to they're going to pose the biggest threat to Arizona at this point in time with a full roster of Puka Nacua, with Cooper Kupp, with Kyren Williams. Stafford looks like he's on point. Their defense is a little suspect. Obviously, they don't have Aaron there anymore. So that's going to be a problem in LA. But right now for the Rams, they are 4-4. Their strength of schedule has been even more difficult. They've had a 576 strength of schedule overall, which is third overall in the NFL. So a very hard schedule for the Rams so far this year, and they're 4-4. So they are kind of weathering that storm, which is why I see them getting some extra pieces, getting some more solidarity to that offense. They have probably the best chance of taking over that division. As we continue into the top half of the NFL at number 15, a team that I thought was going to completely crumble. I thought last year was a fluke for the Tampa Bay Buccaneers. They are a plus 11 at this point. I had them at 24 overall. And, you can never predict injuries and what's going to happen here. But obviously, without them having Mike Evans, without them having Chris Godwin, they've got some, Bucky Irving is banged up at running back. And even, some of their other wide receivers are banged up as well. Cade Otton is kind of carrying the torch for that offense with Baker Mayfield at this point in time. But the Tampa Bay Buccaneers are in that same kind of a position where they're 4-5. Here's the only difference with the Buccaneers is that they have actually had the hardest strength of schedule of any team in the NFL. The teams that they've played the Chiefs, who are obviously undefeated. They've played the Ravens, who are 6-3. They've played the Eagles, who are 6-2. They played the Falcons, who are 6-3. They've played the Commanders, who are 7-2. So they have had a very difficult schedule this year. So no joke. They are, 4-5. They're still a contender at this point in time. Strength of schedule is off the charts. It's a 679% strength of schedule. It will get easier for Tampa Bay. They might actually make a play over Atlanta at this point in time, but Atlanta's schedule is pretty cake too, just because they're in the same division. They got a lot of the same opponents. But look for Tampa Bay to it's tough to say if they're going to struggle or if they're going to come out 50-50. If they had all their key weapons in there, I'd say they're in prime position to take that division. Without a couple of guys there, though, it doesn't look like that's going to happen. Atlanta has the momentum at this point in time. But plus 11, you have surpassed my expectations of what you were going to do, Tampa Bay. Congratulations. At number 14, here's another team that has inspired people, I guess, and that is the Denver Broncos, who've had one of the best defenses in the NFL this year. You take a look at the AFC West at this point in time and you're thinking, oh, Kansas City. It's all Kansas City and everybody else is going to fade away. Well, look at who we've talked about so far. We're at number 14, and the only other team that we've discussed at this point in time are the Raiders. So the Raiders are flopping, which I think a lot of people kind of suspected that they would this year. The Broncos doing very well with Bo Nix. Sean Payton's second year there. He's got some things going with that defense, which is pretty fantastic. But the Denver Broncos can pose a threat to the Kansas City Chiefs. That's who they're playing this week. I look forward to that game a lot. The Broncos also have a winning record, 5-4 at this point in time. Now, here's the kicker. They've had some easier teams that they've played, right? So we talked about the Tampa Bay Buccaneers, who had the easiest or the hardest strength of schedule. Now we're talking about the Denver Broncos, who have the second easiest strength of schedule, right behind the New England Patriots, who have had the easiest schedule. Their opponents, 28 wins, 42 losses. They've got a 400 winning percentage overall. Some of their easier games that they've had, they've played the Jets, who have 3 wins. The Saints only have 2. The Raiders have 2. The Panthers have 2. They've played the Bucks. They've played the Chargers, have 5. The Seahawks have 4. So not a lot of tough teams there outside of the Ravens that they've played. But otherwise, an overall easy schedule for the Denver Broncos as well. At number 13 coming in, we've got the Arizona Cardinals. We've talked about them extensively. I didn't think the Cardinals were going to do much. It's a plus 16 for the Arizona Cardinals. They move up 13 to number 13 overall. Obviously, they're leading that division. It might be the weakest division in football right now. You could argue that. But you've got the Arizona Cardinals that are right there. And we've talked about them before, 5-4 leading that division. They've had a tougher schedule too. Talking about the number 1 strength of schedule, going to the Buccaneers. Well, they've had the second hardest strength of schedule, and they're still 5-4. So not too bad for the Cardinals. That's a lot of positive outlook for them for the rest of the year. They've played opponents that have 42 wins, 25 losses. It's a 627 winning percentage that they've faced so far this year, which is the second toughest in the NFL. So kudos for the Arizona Cardinals. Will they make it happen with Kyler Murray? with James Conner as their running back. Obviously, they've got Marvin Harrison Jr. there. So they can't have much harder of a schedule. So if they could just keep that going, they might walk away with that division as well. At number 12, moving up 4 spots from number 16, is probably the one team that can pose the biggest threat to the Kansas City Chiefs, and that is the LA Chargers. And what a great job that Jim Harbaugh has done there. He wanted that to be really a running game because that's his forte, right? That's his motto. He runs the ball. He's had to change that a little bit, especially after their bye week. He had J.K. Dobbins and Gus Edwards. Gus Edwards is out now. Got to turn that ball over to Justin Herbert, your franchise quarterback that you just signed 5 years, $250 million. He's got to be able to throw the ball. He was hurt in the beginning of the year. Now looks like he's doing much better. He's out there. He's having fun. He looks healthy. So the Chargers, I think, just with the enthusiasm that is there, they are only 5-3 at this point in time. Obviously, they're 3 games back from the Kansas City Chiefs at this point in time, but I think that they could play spoiler down the road. They have had a pretty modest schedule as well, 30 wins, facing teams that have 30 wins, 31 losses. So it's almost a 500. It's a 492 winning percentage overall. That's tied for 18th in the NFL. So, but not bad, right? Having a middle of the road schedule. I got them at number 12 right now, just based on what they've done, who they've played, who they've beaten. It's up 4 spots. I figured that they were going to be somewhere in that middle of the road type of a team, being in that same division. I'm glad that they haven't consumed themselves with the other opponents that are in their division. I look forward to seeing what the LA Chargers can do for the rest of the season after halftime here. At number 11, we've got the Philadelphia Eagles, who actually fell 4 spots. I had them at number 7 earlier before the season even started. Eagles not playing terrible. They have a 6-2 record. It's just that they've faced really easy opponents at this point in time. The opponents that they've faced have a combined 26-37 record. That is a .413 winning percentage, which puts them tied for 28th for strength of schedule. So not a very tough schedule for the Philadelphia Eagles at this point. Sorry, just had to back out of something right now. I messed up one of my formulas, but Philadelphia Eagles 6-2. They are going to have a lot of hard work, I guess, going forward with them playing the Washington Commanders. They look like they have full throttle ahead. Not a fan of Nick Sirianni. I don't know what his problem is. I think he's a mental case at this point in time. Mocking your own fans, I'm not even sure what that's all about. If they don't like your play calling, you're going to have to toughen up, Buttercup, and get used to what your fans in Philadelphia, who are probably some of the rudest fans in the NFL, they're definitely some of the most harsh critics in the NFL being in Philadelphia. So toughen up there, guy. You'll probably still make the playoffs. Philadelphia Eagles. Number 10, here we go. We've got the Houston Texans. Houston Texans, I started off this year at number 10, and guess what? They are still at number 10. Still like the Houston Texans. They've lost Stephon Diggs for the entirety of the season. They don't have Nico Collins right now, so they are hurting right now at wide receiver. Their biggest guy right now is Tank Dell. You expected them to make a move for a wide receiver somewhere, before this deadline hit this last Tuesday. I was expecting maybe an Adam Thielen. Maybe they would go after Mike Williams. They didn't go after anything. So it's all up to second-year man C.J. Stroud to carry this team and get him back into the playoffs again. With the Houston Texans, figured that they weren't going to be this phenomenon that everybody thought that they were going to after having a great rookie year with C.J. Stroud and their head coach, DeMeco Ryans. A little bit of a sophomore slump. They are still 6-3, though. However, their schedule has not been that difficult. Facing teams that have 38 wins, 41 losses, that is a win percentage of .481. That puts them at 21st overall, and still with a record of 6-3. You kind of figure that they should be maybe closer to that 7-2 marker. But again, they've had some losses. Don't know if I mentioned this before. Joe Mixon being out in the beginning of the year. He started off really well, missed about a month. Now he's back, but now their passing game is definitely hurt without their top 2 wide receivers in there. So Houston Texans, you've got a pretty simple task ahead of you, though, in your division. You should easily make the division championship again. At number 9, we've got a team that I did not have any open whatsoever, bringing in 2 brand new quarterbacks with Justin Fields and Russell Wilson. You got the Pittsburgh Steelers, and maybe it was just out of my blind hate for the Pittsburgh Steelers, being a Baltimore Ravens fan, but I'll give them their due respect here. Putting them at number 9, that is up 11 spots. I had them at number 20 before, so it's almost like them and the Cincinnati Bengals have swapped positions here. Pittsburgh Steelers, You're still only at number 9 for one very obvious reason. You're 6-2, but your opponents are 30-40. Winning percentage or strength of schedule is a .429, which makes you tied for 26th overall. So you've literally had one of the top 5 easiest schedules in the NFL, and it's about to get a lot harder for the Pittsburgh Steelers. I know Russell Wilson looks like he's been playing good. Mike Williams is in there now at wide receiver to give them another weapon, not just having oh my gosh, why can't I think of Van something as your number 3 wide receiver? But you got Pickens there now, and you've got Mike Williams. Should be a good 1-2 punch. Najee Harris is starting to come around. You got Warren. He was hurt. Now he's playing again too. And obviously you still base everything around that defense. Watt should probably have won the Defensive Player of the Year last year. He's definitely on pace to be in that conversation, if not to win it again this year. So the Steelers are not going to be a pushover of a team. You never can be with Mike Tomlin. I thought that they were going to fall flat this year. They've had injuries on the offensive line as well, but their second half of the schedule for this year is going to be a lot harder. They're going to have to face their own division, the Bengals twice, the Ravens twice. I think they play Kansas City in there as well as some other harder teams. So it's not going to be an easy road for the Pittsburgh Steelers. They were front-loaded with an easy schedule. It's going to get a lot harder for them, so don't be surprised if they start sinking down to that original spot at number 20 overall. But for now, plus 11 from the beginning of the year, number 9. At number 8, we've got the Green Bay Packers. I thought that they would be good. I just didn't think that they would be this good. Had them at number 13 overall on the year. Not a big fan of Jordan Love. He's been kind of hit or miss for the Packers this year. Still even being their starter last year, not a lot of experience there. Did not care for their wide receiver room. A lot of inexperience there with Daubs and Wicks and Christian Watson being injury prone, which he was also injured again this year. But they've got a 6-3 record right now, and it's an admirable 6-3 record because their strength of schedule has been a 5-15, which puts it at 12th overall, toughest schedule so far through the first half of this season, facing opponents that are 35-33. NFC North is up for grabs, I guess, at this point in time, even though everybody thinks that the Detroit Lions are the hands-down favorite. I believe that as well. Vikings came out of the chutes faster than what anybody anticipated them to be, and you've got the Green Bay Packers in there as well. We've talked about the Bears already. They're going to fall from grace. They're just going to free fall. But the Packers can still be in that hunt. They could still get that one of those 3 wild card spots. Look for them to actually make the playoffs this year as well. Great job for them so far on the season. At number 7, here's probably one of the biggest shockers or biggest surprises for me when it comes to a team that I thought was going to be garbage, but ended up doing really well. They made a lot of moves in the offseason, including a new head coach in Dan Quinn. The Washington Commanders jump up 17 spots. I had them at number 24 earlier, and now they're number 7. Thought that with their schedule that they had in front of them that they were not going to be able to pull off a 7-2 record at this point in time after 9 weeks, but they definitely did. The schedule turned out to be a lot easier than what a lot of people thought. They've faced opponents 29 wins, 42 losses. That is a 408 strength of schedule or winning percentage, which puts them at 30th, which is why they are still at number 7 on my list here on the power rankings. Yes, they're 7-2. It's the first 7-2 team that we've talked about. Still not a very confident 7-2, I'll say at this point, just because of the strength of schedule that they've played. When they've played hard teams, they've lost. For example, they have played the Baltimore Ravens, 6-3 Baltimore Ravens. They lost to them. And they also played, I think it was the Cardinals that they lost to as well. But the Washington Commanders, I think that they're going to end up falling a little bit here as well. They might still win the division just because the rest of the division is bad, but it's definitely a race between them and Philadelphia at this point in time. Kudos to Jaden Daniels, a guy that I said should have been drafted number 1 overall. He's showing signs, the same thing that what he did in college when he threw for 40 touchdowns and ran for 10 more. He's leading that team. He looks like a veteran already. He's still making the mistakes of a rookie, but that's got to be a really optimistic thing to see in Washington for the Commanders there. Washington at number 7. Coming in at number 6, the Atlanta Falcons. I thought with their new head coach coming in, Raheem Morris, who's never had any success on any team. He's been really, if you look at his record before this, he's been a complete bust and a failure of a coach, even with the Falcons a previous time being fired with the Tampa Bay Bucks. I figured he was going to come in and screw it all up. And you didn't really know what was going to happen with Kirk Cousins at this point in time, coming in off of a season-ending injury from the Vikings. But the running game has really taken off, and their passing game has really taken off. Kirk Cousins has shown that he can throw the ball around. Both Drake London and Darnell Mooney, just from even a fantasy perspective, they're in the top 12. Both of them top 12 wide receivers on the same team. There's not another team that actually has that out there. And they still have Kyle Pitts. They still have Bijan. They still have Algier. So the offense is really great this year. The defense has gotten a little bit better as well. I believe that they added, can't think of the linebacker that they added earlier, but they have Bates back there as well at safety. So the Falcons plus 15 had them at number 21 overall. They're a team where they could very well easily win that division now with the Tampa Bay Buccaneers and all of the problems that they're having. The New Orleans Saints are pretty much out of it. Carolina Panthers are pretty much out of it. So the Falcons come in at 6-3. They've had a tougher schedule as well. There's been no gimmies here for the Falcons. All of their games, win or loss, have been a one-score game at 6-3. Their opponents are 36-33 combined, and that is a winning percentage of, or strength of schedule of, 522, which puts them at 9th overall strength of schedule. So it's no fluke that they're up there. They're playing very good football at this time. They are a very tough, grinded-out kind of a team. So I look forward to seeing what they will do in the second half of the year. Let's get to the top 5. And we're going to start top 5 with the Minnesota Vikings. Minnesota Vikings, the biggest surprise out of any team that I had originally scheduled. In the beginning of the year, I said that the Minnesota Vikings would actually probably lose 4 out of their first 5 games. They would end up benching Sam Darnold at that point in time, going with J.J. McCarthy. So trying to predict the season, didn't do very well with the Minnesota Vikings here, jumping up 22 spots, which means I had them at number 27 overall. There is no J.J. McCarthy, right? He got hurt beforehand, and so now it's been the Sam Darnold show. He's been doing really well. Aaron Jones has been doing very well. You got J.J.'s been doing very well. So now you're getting T.J. Hawkinson back at tight end. So the Vikings have a lot of good fortune in front of them. Still kind of a shaky offensive line overall, but the defense has really come through. The additions with Van Ginkel and Grenard, these guys have really been playing very well so far this year. The Vikings 6-2, and they've done it with not an easy schedule either. Like I mentioned, when you're looking at that first part of the year for them, figured that they were going to drop a lot of those games, going up against Houston, going up against San Fran. But their opponents that they have faced are 32-28 collectively, which puts it at a 533 winning percentage or 533 strength of schedule, which puts that number 8 overall in the NFL. So you can't discredit the 6-2, say that it's been an easy one. It definitely has not. If there is a challenging game out there, obviously they lost to the Lions, but that's going to be it. I think they're going to lose to these top tier teams. They should be able to make the playoffs if nothing extraordinary happens with more losses to the team. Or more injuries to the team. If they lose Sam Darnold, they're pretty much screwed, because then you're going with Nick Mullins or whoever else that you've got stashed away on your practice squad. So Sam Darnold is going to be the key to keep this offense thriving and going strong. And the coaching has got to be there, because watching some Vikings games earlier in this year, they will have a 28-point lead, and they'll piss it away by still trying to pass the ball and stopping the clock and not just running it out and taking the win. So coaching could become a factor, Kevin O'Connell. But if they keep winning these games, it'll be really fun to see them at the end of the season in the playoffs. Number 4, we're going with the Buffalo Bills. They have jumped up 7 spots. Everybody knew that the Buffalo Bills was going to be good. One question mark with the Buffalo Bills was wide receiver when they were coming in to this season. They got rid of Stephon Diggs. Yes, they got rid of Gabe Davis. So who are they going to have? Khalil Shakur, and then they drafted Keon Coleman. Well, now they traded, they got Amari Cooper in there as well. So the big question mark was going to be wide receiver. They addressed the wide receiver issues. James Cook looks like a stud. Ray Davis looks like a great backup there in Buffalo. So their offense doesn't look like it has missed a beat. Allen is playing very well also. And you've got the Bills now, who are at 7-2 at the top of that AFC East division. You could say, hey, guess what? They haven't had a very hard season so far this year. They're 7-2, sure, but their opponents are 30-40 overall. It's only a 429 winning percentage. It's actually tied for 26th on the strength of schedule. So top 5 easy schedule, top 6 easy schedule for the Buffalo Bills. Maybe that's why they're up there a little bit more than what people thought they were going to, a little bit more than what I thought at halftime here, jumping up 7 spots from number 11 to number 4. But they should be a shoo-in to make the playoffs as well. At number 3, we're going with the Baltimore Ravens. I had them at number 2 overall. I mentioned before that I had the San Francisco 49ers at number 1 overall coming into the season. I thought that was going to be the one team that, with all of the firepower that they had, would be able to take down the Ravens or beat the Ravens. Ravens have been an odd anomaly of a team this year. They lost to Kansas City in week 1. I think everybody pretty much saw that happening, especially if you knew the referees were going to get involved and screw them out of it. And then same thing happened against the Las Vegas Raiders as well. If you watch that game, I don't know how many, 15 different penalties, and they called stuff back and whatever else to let the Raiders in. So you've got the Baltimore Ravens. They're actually the second highest scoring offense per game this year, right behind the Lions, who we haven't talked about yet either. And the Ravens are 6-3. So no, they don't have 7 wins, but they're still better than a lot of these 7-win teams. I would, and they have beaten the Bills, so I would put them ahead of the Bills coming up. They have beaten the Commanders, who have 7 wins also. So I can't very well put the Ravens behind Washington. I can't put them behind Buffalo because they beat both of those teams. So realistically, you got to keep them right there where they're at. They're at 6-3, should be 7-3 after tonight when they beat the Cincinnati Bengals. And their schedule has not been cake either. I mentioned a couple of teams that they've beaten already that have 7 wins already, and the Chiefs that they had to play 8-0. So their record, or the teams that they've faced, 37-33 overall. It's a 529 winning percentage or strength of schedule, and that puts them at number 10 overall. So definitely a hard schedule, but they are making it look easy with Derrick Henry, Zay Flowers, Lamar Jackson's playing great. Bateman's has his ups and downs. Mark Andrews wasn't even a factor in the beginning of the year. Now he is. They went out and they traded for Deontay Johnson from Carolina. The only thing that they probably should have done is get some damn defense, and they failed to do that at the trade deadline. So they're going to have to continue to score 40-plus points in order to win these games. I would anticipate that this game tonight is going to be something absurd like 37-39 because both of these teams' defense are just terrible. So Baltimore Ravens fall down 1 spot to number 3. They are still forced to be reckoned with in the AFC, which brings us down to 2 teams. Now, I got to give credit where credit is due to the Kansas City Chiefs here. I have them at number 1, obviously, after I just showed you. I've got the Detroit Lions at number 2. So a little bit of a swap here between the Lions and the Baltimore Ravens at that top of the order here. Lions I did have at number 3. Now they're at number 2. It's a bump up of 1 spot. And as I mentioned before, the Detroit Lions are 7-1. They have had a little bit easier of a schedule than the Baltimore Ravens have. At 7-1, their opponents are 28-31, which is actually not even a winning record or a winning strength of schedule here at 475. Puts them 20th strength of schedule in the NFL. And that's where we're at with the Detroit Lions. They made some moves as well in the before the trade deadline here. They got Zadarius Smith to beef up their defense. That should help them out tremendously. They lost Aiden Hutchinson. You can't even think about replacing an Aiden Hutchinson, so that's a big hit to them. But still 7-1, probably the best team, or at least in my opinion, the best team in the NFL or the NFC on that side of the ball. Can't wait for them to make the playoffs again. I'm really still rooting for a Detroit Lions Super Bowl against somebody. Maybe over here. I don't know. But we'll see. So Detroit Lions at number 2, which automatically means that the last team standing is the Kansas City Chiefs. You can see it +3 by them. I had them 4th overall because I don't like them. And because, honest to God, they just, people want to – it's the same thing as people talking about Patrick Mahomes being in the MVP talks. What the hell are we talking about Patrick Mahomes in the MVP talks for? Because he's 8-0. Last time I checked that this was a team sport here, and that's how they're winning. They've got a great run defense that is shutting teams down, and they play just well enough to squeak out some wins. Oh, and by the way, they get a lot of referee help as well, even including last week's game when they went into overtime against Tampa Bay. And I'm not saying they wouldn't have won the game, but for Pete's sake, when you've got everybody on the offensive line who shouldn't be moving, and then your right tackle is a false start. You don't flag it, and it's a false tackle to the point where he almost trips the guy running across the backfield. I'm at a loss for the lack of flags being thrown against the Kansas City Chiefs. It's become blatantly obvious right now, but you know what? I'm still going to put them at number one. But here's my prediction with the Kansas City Chiefs. They're going to make the playoffs. Obviously, you're not going to make the playoffs after going 8-0 in the season. They're going to get their butts kicked in the playoffs by somebody as long as the officiating is fair. And I don't even care who that is. I don't care if it's the Houston Texans, the Pittsburgh Steelers, the Buffalo Bills. I would love to see that happen. Or if it's the Ravens, but somebody has got to take this team down. They are not a great 8-0 team at this point in time. And I say that because the Kansas City Chiefs have beaten teams with a combined record of 33-37. It is a .471 winning percentage there, and it is tied for the 22nd toughest schedule in the NFL. Not very hard, but I guess the schedule makers like it that way too. You get the Thursday night game in Kansas City against Baltimore. You screw them out of that game, and then you got 10 days to prepare for the Cincinnati Bengals, where the Cincinnati Bengals only had 7 days. And then in that game, by the way, that one came down to a poor pass interference call. And then you get extra time to play the Tampa Bay Buccaneers, which you barely squeaked out of that one. And I guarantee that if they would have had either Mike Evans or Chris Godwin in their lineup, you wouldn't have won it because, hey, went into overtime. You put one of those guys out there, you can't cover them. So there's the breakdown, there's the rundown, there's the halftime power rankings brought to you by Downfield Read. You're going to get a bunch of these different power rankings in here. If you have any questions, comments, concerns, you want to tell me I'm full of shit, I'd love to have the argument with you or at least the conversation with you about those kinds of things. So definitely when you get a chance, go down here. You'll see subscribe, share, all that kind of stuff. We're getting into the really important time of fantasy football here where you're either going to make the playoffs, you're not going to make the playoffs. Feel free to hit me up. Follow me on YouTube so you can catch all the videos that I do with, either Nick from Relatively Uncharted or Sean, who writes for Yardbarker and Total Apex Sports. There's a couple other people that I do stuff with as well. Follow along everywhere, but you're going to get the most information on X or on YouTube. Make sure that you're following so you can see these videos come through. I always have it open up to the public so that if you want to ask your questions, if you want to comment, whatever it is, please feel free to do so. But we have a game to get to tonight that's going to start in about 45 minutes. So I'm going to let everybody go. We're at about that 1 hour mark. Have a great Thursday night football game, everybody. And like I said, follow me on X, and we'll be answering questions throughout the weekend on your fantasy teams.